Is it your testimony that the man sitting at this table committed the robbery?
It is.
Marcus Reed had spent 8 years keeping other people alive. He was 34 years old, 6'2", and had worked personal security since leaving the army at 26. He was not the kind of bodyguard who stood at doors looking threatening. He was the kind who sat in the driver's seat and watched everything and said nothing and made sure that the person he was paid to protect arrived and departed without incident. He was very good at his job. And for 6 of those 8 years, his employer was Victor Cole. Victor Cole was 51 years old and ran a real estate development company that had built 37 properties across 4 states in 15 years. He was wealthy in the way that certain men are wealthy. Not visibly, not ostentatiously, but structurally. The kind of wealth that does not need to announce itself because it is built into every room it enters. He was also, as Marcus would come to understand fully, only in the final months of their arrangement, a man who had built that wealth on a foundation that required occasional violence to maintain. Not frequent violence. Victor Cole was not a reckless man, but when a situation required a permanent solution, Victor Cole had the resources and the willingness to apply one. Marcus had suspected this for 2 years before he saw it confirmed in a parking garage on a Tuesday night in October. The man who was killed was named Daniel Okafor. He was 43 years old. He had been Victor Cole's primary development partner for 9 years, the man who handled city permits, contractor relationships, and the complex bureaucratic architecture that turned Victor's money into buildings. He was also, Marcus learned afterward, the man who had discovered 3 years earlier that Victor had been systematically defrauding the city housing authority, falsifying affordable housing certifications to access government subsidies while actually building luxury units. The fraud was worth $47 million over 8 years. Daniel had discovered it accidentally. He had kept quiet about it for 3 years because Victor had paid him to keep quiet. A separate arrangement, private, undocumented. Then Daniel's conscience had finally exceeded his bank account. He had contacted a federal investigator 6 weeks before he died. Victor found out 4 days later, and on a Tuesday night in October, in a parking garage on the 3rd level of the Meridian Tower, 2 men named Garrett and Sims, who had handled situations for Victor Cole on 3 previous occasions, walked behind Daniel Okafor and ended the problem permanently. Marcus Reed drove the car. He had not known beforehand what was going to happen. Victor had told him they were meeting a contractor. Late night, routine. Marcus had believed him because in 6 years Victor Cole had never given him reason not to. He watched it happen in the rearview mirror. He put the car in drive, and for 8 months he said nothing. Victor came to Marcus the following morning, not with a threat. Victor Cole didn't make threats in the conventional sense. He made arrangements, and he sat across from Marcus in the back of the same SUV, parked in the private garage beneath Victor's office building, and he explained the situation with the calm precision of a man reading a contract. "What you saw last night was a business decision," Victor said. "I need to know that you understand what that means for you." Marcus said nothing. "It means you have 2 options," Victor continued. "The first option is that you continue working for me. Your salary doubles effective immediately. In 18 months, you receive a payment of $400,000 and you retire. Quietly, somewhere comfortable." Marcus asked what the second option was. Victor looked at him for a long moment. "There is no comfortable version of the second option," he said. Marcus looked out the window of the SUV at the concrete wall of the parking garage. He thought about the sound the body had made hitting the ground. He thought about the $214,000 he had in savings. He thought about his mother in Savannah who needed a new roof. He took the first option. The 8 months that followed were the longest of Marcus Reed's life. He drove Victor to meetings. He stood outside restaurants. He watched hotel lobbies and conference rooms and charity dinners. He did his job with the same quiet precision he had always applied to it. And every night he went home to his apartment and sat in the dark and thought about Daniel Okafor. He had looked Daniel up 3 days after the parking garage. Daniel had a wife named Grace, and he had a daughter named Amara who was 12 years old and attended a private school in the city on a scholarship she had won herself. Amara had been photographed at a science fair 2 months before her father died. She was holding a trophy and smiling with the particular expression of a child who has not yet learned that the world does not always reward the deserving. Marcus had looked at that photograph for a long time. He had closed his laptop. He had gone to work the next morning. This continued for 8 months. Then 2 things happened in the same week that changed the calculation completely. The first thing was a news article. A local investigative journalist had published a piece about the stalled investigation into Daniel Okafor's death, ruled a robbery gone wrong by the initial police report, cut a conclusion that Daniel's wife Grace had been publicly challenging for months. The article included a photograph of Grace and Amara at a press conference. Amara was standing beside her mother holding a sign that read, "My father was not a robbery. Someone knows the truth." Marcus read the article at 6 in the morning, sitting at his kitchen table. He read it 3 times. The second thing happened 4 days later. Marcus was driving Victor to a dinner meeting when Victor received a phone call. He did not put it on speaker. He never did when Marcus was in the car, but the call lasted 6 minutes, and Victor's responses were short and specific. And at the end of it, he said one sentence that Marcus heard clearly through the quiet of the car. "Make sure the wife doesn't become a problem," Victor said. Well, then he ended the call and straightened his jacket and said nothing for the rest of the drive. Marcus parked the car. He opened Victor's door. He watched Victor walk into the restaurant. Then he sat in the driver's seat for 11 minutes. And he made a decision. Marcus Reed had spent 8 years in close proximity to powerful men. He understood something that most people did not. That powerful men are only as secure as the systems they trust. And the systems they trust are built by people who can be reached. He had 3 things that Victor Cole did not know about. The first was a voice recorder he had carried on his person every working day for the past 4 years. Not because he had suspected anything specific, but because a former colleague in the army had told him once that documentation is armor, and Marcus had believed him. The recorder had captured 6 years of conversations in Victor Cole's presence. Most of it was irrelevant. Meetings about properties, phone calls about permits, dinner conversations about real estate trends. But scattered through 6 years of audio were 17 conversations that were not irrelevant at all. Conversations about payments that did not appear in any financial record. Conversations about people who needed to be managed. And one conversation from 8 weeks before the parking garage in which Victor Cole had said Daniel Okafor's name in a context that made his intentions unmistakable. The second thing Marcus had was a safety deposit box at a bank Victor Cole had no connection to, a box that contained copies of every document he had quietly photographed over 6 years of access to Victor's private spaces. Financial records, or correspondence, contracts with names that did not appear in any public filing. The third thing Marcus had was a contact. A federal investigator named Sarah Whitmore, who had been quietly building a case against Victor Cole for 2 years, and who had, 4 months earlier, left Marcus a business card through a mutual contact with a single handwritten note on the back. The note said, "When you are ready." Marcus had kept the card in the inside pocket of his jacket every day since. He took it out now. He called the number. Sarah Whitmore answered on the second ring. She did not sound surprised. "I wondered when you would call," she said. Marcus told her about the parking garage. He told her about the offer Victor had made the next morning. He told her about the 8 months of silence and the $400,000 he had not yet received, and the sentence he had heard in the car 4 days ago about Grace Okafor. Sarah listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked 3 questions. How much audio did he have? What was in the safety deposit box? And how quickly could he get everything to her without Victor knowing? Marcus told her. She was quiet for a moment. You understand what happens when you hand this over, she said. Victor Cole has significant resources and significant reach. The moment he knows you are cooperating, your situation becomes dangerous. Marcus said he understood. You also understand that you drove the car, she said. That makes you a material witness at minimum and potentially an accessory. Or any cooperation agreement has to be negotiated carefully. Marcus said he understood that too. He thought about Amara Okafor holding a sign that said someone knows the truth. What do you need from me? He asked. Sarah told him. The 3 weeks between Marcus's phone call to Sarah Whitmore and Victor Cole's arrest were the most dangerous weeks of Marcus Reed's life. He continued working. He drove Victor to meetings. He stood outside restaurants. He opened car doors and watched lobbies, and did everything exactly as he had always done it, while simultaneously meeting Sarah Whitmore's team at 3 separate locations to transfer evidence. The audio files went first, transferred to encrypted drives at a parking lot 40 minutes from the city. The safety deposit box contents went 3 days later, photographed systematically by a federal forensic team, while Marcus kept Victor occupied with a manufactured scheduling conflict. The written statement, Marcus's full account of the parking garage, the offer, the 8 months and the sentence in the car, was recorded over 6 hours across 2 sessions in a federal building. He entered through a service entrance. On 3 occasions during those 3 weeks, Marcus became aware that he was being watched. Not by federal agents, by Victor's people. Garrett appeared twice in locations that were not coincidental. Once in the lobby of a restaurant Marcus had not told anyone he was visiting. Once parked across the street from his apartment building at 11 at night, sitting in a dark car doing nothing, which is the particular activity of a man making sure someone knows he is there. Marcus photographed each instance and sent the images to Sarah within minutes. He did not change his behavior. He did not vary his routes. He did not leave town. He understood something important. Victor was watching because he was not yet certain. A man who is certain does not send someone to sit outside an apartment building. He sends someone inside. The watching meant Victor was still calculating. Marcus needed to give him nothing new to calculate. He had learned in the army that the most dangerous thing you can do when you suspect surveillance is to act like you suspect surveillance. He drove Victor to a charity dinner on a Thursday evening. He waited outside for 3 hours. He drove him home. He said goodnight. While at 6:14 the following morning, federal agents arrested Victor Cole at his penthouse apartment. Garrett and Sims were arrested simultaneously at 2 separate locations. Marcus Reed was taken into federal protective custody at 6:15. The trial of Victor Cole lasted 19 days. The charges were first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, federal housing fraud totaling $47 million, obstruction of justice and witness tampering. Victor's defense team, 4 attorneys from one of the most expensive firms in the country, built their case around 2 arguments. The first was that the audio recordings were inadmissible. The judge disagreed. The second was that Marcus Reed was an unreliable witness who had accepted money to stay silent and was now cooperating only to reduce his own legal exposure. Either prosecutor, a woman named Diana Walsh, who had been waiting for this case for 2 years, addressed this directly in her opening statement. Marcus Reed did take the money, she told the jury. He will tell you that himself. He sat in that car and he watched a man die, and he took $400,000 to stay quiet. He is not here today because he is a hero. He is here today because a 12-year-old girl was holding a sign outside a press conference that said, "Someone knows the truth." And Marcus Reed decided that someone was going to be him. The courtroom was completely quiet. Victor Cole looked at Marcus from the defense table. Marcus looked back. Marcus Reed testified for 2.5 days. He described the parking garage in precise detail, the time, the lighting, the position of each man, and the sequence of events from the moment they parked to the moment they drove away. He described the conversation in the SUV the following morning. Victor's voice, his exact words, the particular calm of a man who had done this before and expected it to be handled in the same way it had always been handled. He described the 8 months. He did not soften them. He did not present himself as a man who had been struggling heroically with his conscience. He described what he had actually done, gone to work every day, taken his salary, said nothing, with the same precision he brought to everything else. Victor's defense attorney cross-examined him for 4 hours. The attorney was skilled. He established the money. He established the 8 months. He established that Marcus had signed a cooperation agreement that reduced his potential criminal exposure significantly. "So you are testifying today," the attorney said, "not because you suddenly developed a conscience, but because you negotiated a deal that keeps you out of prison." Marcus looked at him. "I am testifying today," Marcus said, "because a man is dead, and his daughter is 12 years old, and she was holding a sign outside a press conference that said someone knows the truth. I am the someone. That is why I am here." The attorney paused. He had no follow-up question. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. Victor Cole was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on the murder charge. Additional sentences for the fraud and conspiracy charges ran consecutively. Garrett and Sims each received 40 years. Victor Cole stood at the defendant's table as the verdicts were read. He did not look at Marcus. He did not look at anyone. He looked at the middle distance with the expression of a man who had spent his entire life calculating odds and had finally encountered a calculation that did not resolve in his favor. Marcus Reed received a suspended sentence and 3 years probation for his role as an accessory after the fact. He walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun. He stood on the steps. He had no plan for what came next. Grace Okafor was waiting outside the courthouse. She had been there every day of the trial. Marcus had seen her in the gallery each morning when he entered and each afternoon when he left. And they had never spoken. She walked up to him now. She was a small woman in her early 40s with the particular composure of someone who has been holding themselves together for a long time through sheer discipline. She looked at him for a moment, then she said, "My daughter wants to meet you." Marcus said he was not sure that was a good idea. "She knows you waited 8 months, Grace said. She knows what you took and what you gave up. She still wants to meet you." Marcus looked at the courthouse steps. He thought about the sign. "Someone knows the truth." "Okay," he said. Amara Okafor was 13 by the time she met Marcus Reed. She had grown 4 inches since the science fair photograph. She met him at a coffee shop near her school on a Saturday morning. Grace sat at a separate table across the room, close enough to intervene, far enough to give them space. Amara sat across from Marcus and looked at him with the direct assessment of a child who has learned not to waste time on politeness that is not earned. "Why did you wait so long?" she asked. Marcus had been expecting many questions. Not that one, not that directly. He told her the truth. He told her about the money, about his mother's roof, about the fear, about the 8 months of going to work every day and coming home every night and sitting in the dark. She listened without interrupting, a habit she had clearly inherited from her mother. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "But you came forward," she said. "Eventually," he said. She nodded. "Eventually counts," she said. She picked up her coffee cup. "My dad used to say that the hardest thing about doing the right thing is that it is usually not the easy thing at the same time," she said. I think he would have understood. Marcus looked at this 13-year-old girl who had lost her father to a parking garage on a Tuesday night and had stood outside a courthouse holding a sign and had somehow arrived at this coffee shop with more grace than most adults he had ever known. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Marcus Reed left personal security after the trial. He spent 3 months doing nothing in particular, an adjustment his therapist described as necessary and that Marcus experienced as the longest and most uncomfortable period of his adult life. He had spent 8 years defined entirely by proximity to other people's schedules, other people's safety, other people's decisions. He had woken every morning knowing exactly where he needed to be and when and why. Without that structure, the days felt formless in a way that surprised him with its difficulty. He started running in the mornings, not because he needed the exercise, he had always been in good physical condition, but because running gave him somewhere to go at 6 in the morning that was not his apartment. He called his mother in Savannah every Sunday. She asked him once, carefully, whether he was sleeping. He told her he was working on it. She did not push further. She had raised him to know the difference between a man who needs to talk and a man who needs to know someone is there. She was simply there. When he eventually took a job with a non-profit organization that provided security consulting to journalists operating in high-risk environments, conflict zones, politically unstable regions, places where the work of documenting the truth carried significant physical risk. He was very good at it. He thought about Daniel Okafor regularly, not with guilt, or not only with guilt, but with the particular ongoing awareness of a man who understands that the choices he made are permanently part of his history, and that the only meaningful response to that is to make different choices going forward. He stayed in contact with Grace and Amara. Not frequently, not intrusively. A message on Amara's birthday. A response when Grace sent him updates about the civil case she was pursuing against Victor Cole's estate for damages. Amara sent him a photograph when she was accepted to a summer program at a university engineering department. She was 14 by then and had apparently decided that structural engineering was what she wanted to study. Marcus looked at the photograph for a long time. He thought about her father, the man who had handled permits and contractor relationships and the complex bureaucratic architecture of building things. The man who had finally decided that $47 million in fraud was more than he could continue to be part of. He sent her back a message that said, "Your dad would be proud." "Work hard." She replied with a single word, "Always." The civil case settled 14 months after the criminal verdict. Grace used part of the settlement to establish a scholarship fund in Daniel's name for students pursuing careers in public service. The first recipient was announced the following spring, a young man from the city who planned to study urban planning and affordable housing development. Marcus read about it in a news article at 6 in the morning at his kitchen table. He read it once. Then he got up, made coffee, and went to work. If you are enjoying this story, please like this video and subscribe to Turning Point Tales for more powerful stories every week. Now let us continue. There is a question that runs through this story that never gets a clean answer. It is not whether Victor Cole was guilty. He was guilty, completely undocumented. It is not whether justice was served. It was served eventually. And the question is simpler and harder than either of those. It is, what do you do when you see the wrong thing happen, and the cost of saying so is more than you know how to pay? Marcus Reed's answer was to wait 8 months and then pay it anyway. That is not a heroic answer. It is not a clean answer. But it is an honest one. And in a parking garage on a Tuesday night, and in a courtroom 11 months later, and in a coffee shop on a Saturday morning across from a 13-year-old girl who told him that eventually counts, Marcus Reed discovered something that 8 years of keeping other people safe had not taught him, that the most dangerous thing he would ever protect was not another person, it was the truth, and that protecting it, even late, even imperfectly, even at significant cost to himself, was the only version of his job that he could live with. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Turning Point Tales. We will see you in the next one.